So, Don, you only read 14? I know. I made a mistake. Allie put it out there before I could respond to her. I wanted it to be 14 and 15. Did anybody read 15? Started 15. See, that's where it really gets interesting. This Samson character. What do you guys know of Samson? What have you heard of Samson? Did you guys grow up like learning about Samson with the little felt things? Yeah? Catholic guilt, can't cut your hair. What is it? What do you know about Samson? Go. Super strong, right? Okay, what else do you know? What? I can't hear you. He didn't go blind. He had his eyes taken from him. Yes, close enough. Yeah. What'd you say, Alex?
I don't know. He's a Nazarite.
He was a Nazarite, which means what? What else? Hang on, what did you say? Finish what you're saying.
Yeah, certain things he did for me.
And what? He did it as not only his whole life, he did it from the moment he was inception, I should say. The moment, if you remember when the angel visited the mom, what'd she say? From this moment on, you are to be he is to be a Nazarite. So she took on the Nazarite vow, which is certain things you eat, but also certain things you can and cannot drink. You cannot touch a glass of wine, which in that first century culture, that's like, us kind of drinking milk, right? You don't touch this stuff. That's a part of everyday life. And so to take a Nazarite vow, you are vowing, I will not allow any fermented drink touch my lips, ever. And well, at least in a Nazarite vow, it's usually like a 40-day period. It's a short thing. But for Samson, it was his entire life. Okay? What else do we know about this Samson character? Oh, he had a weakness for women. Yeah. But we're going to get to that in a minute because we don't recognize that. We see that in the beginning, but there's something deceptive there. We'll get there in a second. Anything else that we know about Samson, this character? I'm sorry?
He lied.
And it wasn't the first woman he lied to about that either, huh? Okay? He lied. What? He was a Messiah. That's right. He came to save Israel. Yasa. And so interesting that you say that. So we saw this last week in chapter 13. We saw that there was this angel that came to a woman and said to the woman that you will bear a child. You will be given this child. And it goes through this whole process of a Nazarite vow and what you are supposed to do. But you find this miracle take place with an angel saying you will be given a Savior. Then we go to chapter 14, which Don read. Don, read chapter 14, 1 through 3, please.
All right. Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he noticed a woman, a Philistine girl. He went home again and told his father and mother this. At Timnah he said, I noticed a woman and a Philistine girl. So now get her for me to be my wife. His father and mother said to him, is there no woman among your brothers, daughters, or in our entire nation for you to go and take a wife among these uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get that one from me, she is the one I am found.
Take that one for me. So I've been on this movie kick, right? Trying to apply this to the movies. And one of the things that I was looking at was, okay, this first few verses, this just looks like a a Lifetime romance movie, right? The guy who just sees the woman that he wants, falls in love, and that's who he's got to be. And that's just the kind of guy he is. He's this emotional person that just feels so much love, and as soon as he sees it, he's got to have it. That's what I want, Dad. And so you read those first 3 verses, and you see okay, there's something different about this Philistine woman, which I didn't know until a few years ago. Philistine is a Hellenic word. And according to archaeology, it matches up with the word, which Hellenic is what? Greek. Where did the Philistines come from then? They came from Europe. Right? So there's these blonde-haired, blue-eyed people, or lighter-skinned people. They're not Middle Eastern. They are different looking. So Samson sees this woman who's different looking than all of his, compatriots and so on and so forth, and everybody of his land. She's beautiful. He wants her. So it kind of matches in with this Lifetime movie until you read the very next verse, which says what, Don?
His father and mother did not know that all of this came from Yahweh, who was seeking grounds for a quarrel with the Philistines, since at this time the Philistines dominated Israel.
Let me read a different translation. However, his father and his mother did not know that it was of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines. So wait a second. Is he falling in love head over heels with this woman? Or is this more of an espionage movie? Is this infiltrating deep in behind enemy lines to get into the enemy? That nobody would know, oh, this is just a love story, oh, this is great. But no, there's a deeper plan here. And as you read the rest of 14 and 15, it doesn't look like a Hollywood movie about romance or this Lifetime movie. It really looks more like The Dark Knight. You really see Samson as a character who is not this, when we think of Messiah, we think of, somebody that's this, this positive, influencer. But if you look through the passages of chapter 14 and 15, how many of people of Judah followed Samson? He was a loner. He did everything alone. He didn't have a whole bunch of people that wanted to be with him or be like him. Not even his own people. In fact, at one point, we'll go into this story a little bit. Samson's plan to get into this family and get into the Philistine, it kind of backfires. And we see the dark night really appear. We see the dark side of this Messiah come out. We see that his wife betrays Samson, and he mistakenly thinks because of a sexual thing, but she betrays him out of fear for her own life and her family's life. And then he comes back later for his wife, and his father-in-law has already given her away to somebody else to marry. So Samson gets upset with the Philistines, and he takes these foxes, and there's a lot of that noise crackling, right? I don't know what that is. Is it rain? Is it rain? Whew. So he takes... Yes, sir. Yeah.
You mentioned Europe. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
But, how far did they know about Europe? Or was that a question for?
I would assume they would know a little. I mean, I don't know how far their maps planned about that, but clearly, the Philistines are probably some type of sea-bearing people. They come from Greece, that's on the Mediterranean. And so they probably sailed to that land and then started planting roots and created like the Vikings, and they would travel around and do stuff. Very similar. And so you have this group of people that come from a far-off land, and they look different than everybody else, and they're warriors. And they have their own gods that are different from the gods of the ancient Near Eastern culture. They bring in their own things that they worship. And so they probably knew that there's this far-off people, but I don't know if there's no evidence to say that they knew all of the maps from that far west. That's not a bad question, though. I mean, like I said, within a few years ago, I was reading Archaeology magazine, and it said that DNA proves that the Philistines were from Europe. It's crazy. Never knew that before.
So, question.
Yeah.
So they come into the promised land and they beat these different people, right? And try to take them. Joshua's going out to the judges. So they live in the promised land. The Philistines are coming in that land, or they already been there?
The Philistines have been there for a while. I don't know how long, though. I don't know. Because you had all kinds of different groups that were there. The Canaanites, the Aramites, all these different groups that were in there competing for a small plot of land, basically.
Now, what was the timeline in comparison to David's time?
What is the time frame?
Yeah, that's what, if Brother Elijah said, this was it.
So
What period was this in comparison to?
So King David was probably about 100 years after this. Yeah, approximately.
That was
Yeah, so because after Samson, then you go through a few other generations, and then Kings or 1 Samuel begins, and then that's when Saul appears, and so you're about 4 generations removed from Samson, so about 100 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. Okay, so Samson's plan backfires. We see the dark night comes out. He gets mad and he ties these foxes' tails, and if you want to do some damage, he gets 300 foxes, which is hyperbole, but there's lots of threes throughout this entire book. There's 300 foxes. There's 3,000 men that he kills. There's 3 animals that he takes and uses their bones for weapons. There's 3 women that he encounters, right? And then there's 3 times where he's asked, tell me, the nature of your power. There's 3s everywhere in this story. And he takes 300 foxes and he lights their tails on fire and he sends them out into their grain fields. What happens when you send foxes with fires ablaze into grain that's ready for harvest? Burns the whole thing, right? Well, how do the Philistines
When you
respond?
get to that point, I gotta ask you about this line.
Oh. Go, which line?
line?
Which line?
He kills the line, the bees, and then he eats some honey out of the line, and then he gets his trail, and it's all that.
I don't know. I don't know. I think the lion is just like I said, there's 3 animals that he kills, right? The lion is the first. So there's something about that. I think the bee hive that's in there is to go along with his riddle that he uses, remember, for his wife, or for the Philistines. And then she betrays him with this whole riddle. And so I think it's playing into this greater story of here's this person who has this abundant strength that comes from God. And he's also pretty smart as well. And there's poetic, because the rhyme or the riddle is poetry. It rhymes, right? So there's a lot of layers of texture to this Samson character. He's not just this dumb beast of a man. Ooh, I'm hungry, I want food, or I want woman. That's not who he is. The layers are he's an intellectual person. He's the Dark Knight. I'm telling you, this is who he is. He's this guy. He's smart. He's intellectual. He has feelings and emotions, but he's there's something about him that's a different character. And so Samson sends these animals out. The Philistines are kind of pissed. Well, they retaliate in a way that he probably doesn't expect. How do they retaliate after their fields are burned?
They burn the woman, and the father's family is dead.
Yeah. The woman that he goes back for, and the father says, no, you can't have her. The Philistines go and they burn her to death. You're going to burn our field? We'll burn the people that you care about. So then what does Samson do? Do we know the story? What does Samson do once they burn this woman that, we thought he was just an espionage thing, but there's something there, because what does he do once they are killed? Kills another animal, and he kills all 3,000 of the people that burned his family, or this family. So we have this tit for tat, this retaliation going back and forth. I'm angry, so I'm going to do this to you. And then finally the Philistines come to his tribe, Judah, and they say, look, you got to find this guy, otherwise we're going to kill you. So Judah goes, and they say, Samson, look, we got to turn you in because we don't want to die. He says, fine, you can turn me in just as long as you're not going to kill me. They're like, no, hands off. We just want to give you over to them. So they bind him up. His brothers come to him. His brothers, the people that are his family, people that are supposed to love him, and they bind him up, and they hand him over to the Philistines, to the enemy. 15:11. Alex, 15:11, please.
Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Eden and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them.
As they did to me, so I do to them. And this is a repeat of what they say about him. This verse is repeated twice in this section. Remember that. He rips out of his ropes, kills all these men. The next part of the story goes on. He meets another woman. Who's this? What's her name? Delilah. He meets Delilah. 16:4. Who's got 16:4? Aaron, 16:4, please.
After this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah.
Say it again. Yeah, you said the right verse. I just wanted to make sure that I missed something in mine.
After this, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah.
Good. Yeah, he loved a woman. And so, in every one of these stories, you always see a woman. Delilah is the first time you see the name. But his mother's name was what? A woman. The Philistine that he falls in love with he sees a what? A woman. We don't know her name. And then a third woman that he comes into contact with is a prostitute, is a woman. Threes. And then all of a sudden there's a fourth that breaks his three. He sees a woman, and she has a name. Delilah. There's something different about this story. It breaks the cycle. And this happens a couple times. There's three threes, and a fourth. Three threes, and a fourth. And the fourth is always, bam, it's a problem. There's a big... They haven't seen the Disney movie? No, yeah. They did or didn't? Yeah, probably not. Probably not. But this woman is his downfall. This woman is the seductress. This woman turns on him for what? Money. His first wife had to turn him in and say, look, this is his power, this is what it was, out of fear for her own family, her own life. She was honorable. This woman seduces him for some coins. She tries to get his secret power 3 times. He tells her this different story, this different story, this different story. And then what? On the 4th time, she lays him in her lap and he tells her, this is the secret of my power. And she lulls him to sleep. And what happens when she lulls him to sleep in her lap in this vulnerable position? She cuts his hair, right? 3s, and a 4. And Delilah, there's lots of Hebrew hints here. I didn't pull them up. But she's evil. There's these little elements in her life that point that she is the one who first tortures him after she cuts his hair. She is not just a seductress, she is evil. The Philistines come, they take him, they put him in chains. They torture him. They pull his eyes out. He's beaten. And they brought him before everybody, and they mock his name, and they mock his God. Where is your God now? And they celebrate their gods. And he does something. He asks God one last time, can you do one last miracle? One last time, can you do something that goes against the laws of nature? And he brings an entire building down, and he kills everybody in the building, including himself. Now, as I've read this story a few times over the past few weeks, I wanted to give you the highlights and not get stuck on one or two verses, because there was a parallel that I found. I don't know if you heard it as I was just telling the story. There's a parallel of a miraculous birth where an angel comes and visits a woman and says, "You will have a child." Have you heard that before? Who else have you heard say that?
Mary.
To Mary. Luke 2:26. Also to Sarah, right. And then you have this parallel where it's a very specific verse where Samson says, "As they do to me, I will do to them." Well, that's interesting because we've heard something of the complete opposite from who? Which says what? Do unto others. Treat people the way that you want to be treated, as opposed to, you treated me this way, I'm going to treat you back. I'm going to treat you with a style of vengeance. I'm going to treat you with just this repugnant anger because you did this to me, so I'm going to retaliate to you. This was the world of Samson. But gosh, I thought, isn't this the world that we live in today? You said something to me, so I'm going to do something back to you. I don't like what you said, so I'm going to cancel you. I'm going to, it's getting worse in the city and wherever we are. There's a lot of places where people will now get mad at what they say and they'll pull a gun. Even in high school, you guys, like my son was in high school, like how many fights happened because I don't like what you said to me or you said something to my girlfriend, so I'm going to do what? I'm going to meet you in the bathroom, let's go. I'm going to meet you in the parking lot with a gun. We live in a world of retaliation now because I don't like the words that you said or I don't like what you did. And we find it acceptable. And we read the words of Samson, and that's how he lived his life. But it was filled like the dark night. He was a loner. And it was the opposite of what Yeshua said. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And what about allowing a country, your own flesh and blood, your brothers, to turn you in to the enemy? Somebody who cares about you, somebody who you care about, turn you into the enemy. Where is that parallel found? Who turns Yeshua in? One of the ones that traveled with him every day, walked miles with him, did and witnessed miracles with him. And then he was beaten and tortured, and one last deed to defy the laws of nature. But instead of killing those damned Romans like he was supposed to do, he dies himself alone. And he says, what? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. This is the opposite Messiah. And then Acts 4:10 says, Peter in his great speech says, it was God who raises Yeshua from the dead. Instead of death to everyone, this death comes to life. Romans 8 says this. Romans 8:11. And if the spirit of him who raised Yeshua from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Messiah from the dead shall also give life to your mortal bodies through his Spirit dwelling in you. So then, brothers, we are not debtors to the flesh to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if you live by the Spirit, you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. As I was trying to think through this sermon this whole week, I was struggling with the direction to finish this. And there were 3 words that came to mind. Usually I have thoughts and different things that come to mind, but I only have 3 words, and they don't even connect it. But the first word that just kept hitting me as I was driving and trying to meditate on this was the word humility. I wonder how, in this entire story, do we see the humility of Samson, or do we see the lack of humility? Do we see his ego, or do we see his emotions lead and guide him on his path? They did this to me, so I will do this to them. Is that not our ego speaking? Is that not what happens when somebody pricks that little sensitive insecurity that we have inside of us, and then we have to retaliate? And is that why we live in a world that seeks vengeance for every little thing that is done against us? Because we lack humility. The other word that came to mind, and I don't know why, but it was disciple. What is a disciple? What is a biblical, ancient Near Eastern version of a disciple? Somebody tell me. Somebody who what? Strives to be. What does that mean, strives? Like a copy. To be just like the rabbi. Interesting. How many disciples did Samson have? None. Over and over and over, Yeshua says what? Come, follow me. And I will make you fishers of men. Come, follow me. See what will happen. Come and see what the kingdom of heaven is like. Come and be a part of this. Come and see. Follow me. There's a different aspect to this discipleship. It is this idea that I want to be like my rabbi in everything that he does. This is about character. It's not just, I believe in God, so I will go to heaven. It is this idea that I believe you who you are, and I want to be just like you, so I'm going to act as you act. You say, forgive them. Then I will forgive them. You say, love them when I hate them, so I will love them. You say, show compassion when they don't deserve it, so I will show compassion. You say, give generously with all that you have, even to those who cannot repay, so I give. I believe that this is what's missing in our culture today. We live in a culture that wants to be more like the Dark Knight, to live a life of vengeance. And we are seeing people more and more isolated today than we ever have. We have less community, less personal relationships, less ability to have a personal conversation with somebody because this dang thing is how I communicate. And if it says it on here, it must be true. And if you said it, Walt, then I hate you because you said it on here. So I'm going to say something back. We live in this world where we're justifying our actions as though they are good. And we live in this world where bad is now good and good is now bad. And the last word that hit me as I was driving around was just the word family. As we were starting the service, Wes was ready to start playing his song. But he couldn't because there was just family laughing, enjoying each other, and just smiling, talking. Like a Thanksgiving day where people get together and they just want to be with each other. As I think of that word, that is what community is. It's not about the show. It's not about the teaching. Spiritual community is when this group of people get together and they enjoy life together. And it's what moves us. Community is what helps us to go through tough times. It's those things where when we're struggling, somebody's there to lift us up. When we don't want anybody to know what I'm going through, that person that you know will probably ask you. They do. They ask you, how are you? And I probably have to answer because it's the right thing to do. It's community where we have life. Samson was a loner who died alone and had nobody following him. And he brought death. Yeshua lived a life of family and community. He was about light. And he died. But the miracle of his life was that God brought him back. That we can live in him. We have 1 week until Passover. For some, it's Holy Week. Yeah, for some, it is Holy Week. It is like this week. And I hope and I pray that as I guess I challenge you, the homework for this week isn't in the Bible, but the homework is in you. My challenge to you this week is, what are you doing to humble yourself? What are you doing to say, I want to be more like you, Abba. I want to be more like your son, Yeshua. What are you doing in community? How are you encouraging the community around you? This community, but also the community outside these doors. How are you bringing them into this space of family? Yeshua said, come, follow me. Come, be a part of this group. Come, be a part of what we are doing. Do we do that same thing? Are we inviting people into this space to experience what you experience? A love of a family.
What are we experiencing in this space?
Family. In this space?
What I'm saying is, I don't know if a lot of people know what Jesus is bringing. So the message is so much about he died for our sins. He's bringing heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Bringing peace and so on. So that's what people can hear from saying.
That's the message that you need to get out. And that's what we talk about regularly in here. The kingdom of heaven is like the presence of God in our midst. When we get together, we get the opportunity to experience that. Don't come here because of the great teaching, because it's just average, right? The music, Kevin will say that he comes for the music. Like, this is great, right? I come for you guys. I come for this. Father, we just thank you for this Shabbat. We thank you for a morning where we can thank you for your goodness. I thank you for community, for vulnerability, authenticity. I pray, Lord, that we can be real before you with each other. I pray, Lord, that we can spend the rest of this day glorifying you in everything that we do and say. May we be the light that you have given us. And we praise your holy name. Amen.